All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today. I'm Renee Williams, and I'm an information specialist in the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources. And I'm here once again with my co-host, Billy Thomas.
Hi, Renee. I'm glad to be here. I serve as an extension forester in the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources Extension, and I have absolutely loved doing this show from the woods today. It's been a great opportunity to interact with a lot of folks. We're working a lot with our county extension agents across Kentucky, and we really appreciate all of them. And we have a number of those on, and really everybody else, we really are glad to have you with us today.
Well, we have a really great show lineup today. We're talking some about those little creepy crawly things that you may or may not like, ticks. And we have Jonathan Larson with us, and he's going to be talking about those and all those different maybe myths that you might have heard about, and maybe he can let us know some of those things that we should be doing and we're not.
Yeah, we're so glad to have Dr. Larson come on. Dr. Larson's with the UK Department of Entomology, and he's been working with us in the forestry department for a bit now, and we're just really glad to have him on talking about ticks. We're getting out in the woods a lot right now. Hopefully you are, and you're going to start encountering some of those little crawlers. So we got Dr. Larson's going to be talking about that, and then we'll follow up Dr. Larson's segment with the tree of the week. Renee, we're going to be talking about the black cherry a little bit later with Laurie Thomas. So, Jonathan, if you want to come on and join us, we'll go ahead and let you get started with your show. But we're really appreciative to have you with us this morning.
Well, howdy. Thank you very much. I'm excited to talk with everybody about ticks today. I'm probably one of the two people in the department that actually enjoys doing this, the other one being Anna Pasternak, our graduate tick researcher. You may have seen her on the news here recently, but we're going to chat just a little bit about what ticks are and how they develop, and we'll talk about some of the pathogens that they have in them and how you can keep these little creepy Draculas off of your body. I'm going to share.
That's always a good thing.
Yeah, we want to prevent that from happening, obviously. So we'll just get started here talking a little bit about how they work. So ticks are what we call ectoparasites. That means that they feed on the outside of the body. This is a little different than something like a tapeworm, which is actually inside of you, feeding on you and stealing nutrients from you. Ticks are always on the outside of the skin. I think that's important to share just because a lot of folks, when they talk to me about ticks, they're worried that they're in their body somewhere, that they're down in their esophagus or in their stomach. But ticks are always on the outside of the skin, like we see with this mouse here. So ticks go through some developmental stages. They start as an egg. The egg hatches out into what we call a larval tick, which are quite tiny. They only have 6 legs at this point, which is interesting because they are arachnids, which we normally associate with 8 legs. But they only start their life with these 6. And at this point, they're usually found on smaller creatures. They love some of these mice and other small rodents that we have out in nature. And you can see some hanging out in this mouse's ear. People don't usually feel too bad for the mouse. Usually the sympathy starts with the next picture where we see a rabbit suffering from some nymphal ticks that have gotten onto it. So in between this, what has happened is those larval ticks, or seed ticks as we call them when we get them on people, they've fallen off the rodent and they have molted and they've become a nymphal tick with 8 legs. They get on slightly larger quarry at this point usually, and we can see them on this rabbit here behind the ear up towards the nose, and people usually feel bad for poor Briar Rabbit here. And then they fall off of the rabbit and they'll molt, and then they're going to become adults. Adult ticks typically are going to feed on larger mammals, things like humans, dogs, cattle, deer, horses. And then after they feed on this animal, they're going to fall off, and at this point they're going to mate. So here we see a pretty fully engorged tick on the back of this dog. It's a pretty interesting developmental cycle. Once they start producing those eggs, they make these egg piles that kind of accumulate out in the leaf litter. They look like caviar, sort of. They're kind of disgusting, really. A lot of things about ticks are pretty disgusting, but their eggs particularly so. So they're feeding, they're going to mate, and the reason that they're feeding on us and all these other animals is that they're hematophages. They're just like Dracula. They're just like vampires. They must digest blood from their host in order to survive. They get nutrition from it. It helps them to make their eggs so they can keep making more generations of ticks. And they're very successful at this. They're some of the best hematophages that we have. They're some of our best ectoparasites. One of the traits that helps them to be so successful is their ability to expand, which we can see in the image on the left here. If you've ever heard the phrase, "I'm as full as a tick," we say that for very good reason. Their bodies can expand dozens, maybe even hundreds of times their original size. And there's a lot of blood inside of these little squirmy, wormy little ticks here. But one of my favorite internet jokes right now is that somebody took this image and then put that it's the newest flavor of fruit gushers that you can buy at the grocery store right now. They're horrifying because of this ability to expand and swell. And they can actually wait a long time. They're gluttonous, but they can wait a long time between their meals. Sometimes ticks can wait 1 or even 2 years before they actually succumb to starvation. And this is a handy trick to have because sometimes it's amazing to think that they couldn't find a deer or a mouse with all those populations that are out there. But it's true that sometimes the ticks, they can't find their host. They're not active hunters. They're very passive in most situations. So sometimes they have to be able to wait out those lean periods. One of the other interesting things about ticks is their mouth. This also makes them very successful. Ticks actually have these mouth parts that we call hypostomes, which are kind of rigid, rod-like structures. You can see them in the center of each side of the diagram here in the top and bottom view. The hypostome is in the middle. And then this is an image from Anna, our graduate student, who's studying ticks, and she took this really cool photo of the hypostome kind of separated out from the palps on either side of the mouth parts. So this is very rigid. There's scissors at the tip of it that cut your skin. Once it's inserted, it's hard to pull this out because there's actually backward facing spines. They're very well adapted to stay in place. This is why it's hard not to just rub them off. Like, it's very difficult to just get a tick to fall off of you. The other thing that they do is they start to excrete this saliva that has cement-like qualities, and it cements them in place and anchors them. A tick can remain attached to its host for 7 to 10 days if it's undisturbed, which is horrifying to think about, that there's this little engine pumping blood out of you on your body somewhere. You can't really feel it until you find it. I've had clients that have had these on them for at least 7 days. And I did have one client, she found a tick crawling out of her belly button, and it was fully engorged. And she said the last time she would have been in tick country was about 10 days prior to that when she was camping. So there was a tick hiding in her belly and feeding on her, and she had no clue until it actually crawled out. There are several species of ticks across the United States. Here in Kentucky, we tend to worry about just 3 of them. One of them is the American dog tick. I'd say this ranks number 2 kind of on the list of ticks, but the American dog tick lives in grassy areas. They tend to be along paths and trails. They tend to be where dogs are going to be found, places like that. They like that long grass where they can wait at the end of the blade of grass. The adults are active right now, April into August. We can see some overlap there with generations sometimes, but we generally are going to see the adults right now. They can transmit pathogens, including Rocky Mountain spotted fever and tularemia. If we look here at these 2 pictures, we've got a male on the right and a female on the left. Ticks have a covering on their back that's called a scutum. The scutum is like an armor that helps to protect them. The male's scutum goes from his head up at the top there, down to the tip of his abdomen, and it kind of covers the whole thing. With American dog ticks, it looks sort of like a Rorschach ink blot test. There's the same pattern on both sides and kind of a line down the middle. But with the female, the scutum is much shorter. She's on the left, and her scutum is much more like a lace collar that goes around her neck. It's shorter, it's denser in color, and it's very creamy colored. It's very contrasted with that maroon kind of reddish color throughout the rest of the body. So we can't tell the difference between those males and females. Generally, we find the females on people and dogs, but the males are around too. We've also got our our Lone Star tick. This is another Rocky Mountain spotted fever vector, and it can vector a few other pathogens. This one is more commonly found in and near wooded areas. We've seen a lot of these ticks here in Kentucky. Anna gets a lot of samples mailed to her, and I believe this is the one that she's received the most samples of. So they like to be in those thicker areas. The adults are, again, active April to August. They can transmit ehrlichiosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, heartland virus, a disease that we call STARI, Southern Tick Associated Rash Illness. It's kind of Lyme disease-like, but it's not actually Lyme disease. And then these ones are very famous for their association with the red meat allergy. They can get a sugar molecule in their saliva, they pass it to you, and after that happens, you can't eat hamburgers anymore, or steak, or any other red meat product. It's kind of horrifying for a lot of folks. The male, again, has a long scutum, not really a lot of patterns on his back, just kind of this crimped edge that looks like ravioli, sort of. I'm going to see how many foods I can ruin for you during the presentation. On the left, we have the female. She is where they get their name as a group. She has that lone white dot on her back. That's why they're called the Lone Star tick, not because they like Walker, Texas, or anything like that, but because of this little white dot on her back. They're also rounder in appearance. They have sort of a hockey-like profile when you look, a hockey puck-like profile when you look at them from above, and their mouth parts tend to be a little longer compared to the other ticks. And then that brings us to the most famous tick, the black-legged tick, also known as the deer tick because they like to feed on white-tailed deer and live in forests. I'm guessing a lot of people who deal with forestry type situations have experienced black-legged tick issues. They have sort of a reverse life cycle. Their adults are active from October into May. They can be out and about on any day above freezing temperatures. This past winter was pretty mild. I'm guessing we had a lot of black-legged ticks kind of wandering around in nature. They're most famous for their ability to transmit the bacteria that causes Lyme disease, but they can also be vectors for anaplasmosis, babesiosis, and Powassan virus. The male is sort of a reddish brown color from head to tail, not very interesting looking, not a lot distinct about him. The female has this redder color and then the black scutum on top with her black legs that helps to give the group their name. In terms of ticks, they're active year-round in Kentucky, kind of like what we've been talking about, but really we're kind of in that high tick season right now. This April, May, June timeframe is when it's tick-tock, tick time, and everybody needs to be very aware that this is a problem, that you need to be taking some precautions. Some simple things that we can do are to wear light-colored clothes. When you wear light-colored clothes, it makes it easier to see the ticks. I know we don't always like wearing light-colored clothes, but it does help with the visibility of these darker colored organisms. Other things are to wear your pants as long pants and your sleeves as long sleeves. And then one thing that you can do with your pants is to tuck your pants into your socks. It looks a little dorky, although I did find out recently that this is a fashion statement currently in the UK to tuck your jeans down into your socks and your shoes. So you could be cool if you ever visit London while you're tick prepared. But when you do this, you're cutting off an easy access point for ticks. They can't crawl up your pant leg anymore and gain access to some of their favorite spots behind the knees, in the groin area, around the waist. You're cutting off one of their easier avenues, forcing them to be on the outside of your clothes where you can spot them before they bite you. You should also perform regular tick checks on humans and pets. Check your family, check your friends, check yourself, check your animals. You don't want those ticks to be on you for a long period of time if they have bitten you. In fact, it's better to get them before they actually plug that mouth part in. So check in and around your hair, in and around your ears. You want to check your neck, under your arms, inside of your belly button, definitely around your waist and your groin and behind your knees. Anywhere where there's thin skin, anywhere that kind of folds, anywhere that gets kind of smelly, anywhere that you don't usually show other people, that's kind of a private area. Those are the kinds of places that ticks want to be. You can get a partner. I think that we were talking before the show, there's a country song about this. You can get somebody to help you find the ticks on you and perhaps spark some romance. You never know. But you definitely want to do that. And I would highly encourage you to listen to your vet when it talks about treating your animals for ticks. Finally, we can do some things to our skin and to our clothes that will help to prevent ticks. Some skin applied insect repellents can keep you safe from tick bites. Things like oil of lemon eucalyptus, IR3535, picaridin, and DEET all help. They're not 100%. They're not always going to keep the ticks away, but they do help in most situations. The higher the percentage of the product inside the container, the longer it's going to last. So DEET is really the standby here. The higher the percentage, again, the longer you can rely on it to help you prevent mosquito bites and tick bites. But for some people, DEET's not an option for allergy reasons or just personal preference. So we like to point out that picaridin and that IR3535 are available as well. One of the big things, though, is permethrin. That's really great for bite prevention. You can treat your clothes or your gear. You can buy impregnated clothing from a camping store. And when the ticks crawl on this, they're killed. It's an actual insecticide. You never want to apply it to your skin, just to the non-living materials that you have, and it will kill the ticks. You'll get home and you'll find them kind of caught up in the folds of your clothes, and they'll be perished, and you can laugh at them because you were triumphant over them before they could steal any of your bodily fluids. The final thing I want to mention is when you do find a tick inserted into you and attached to you, you definitely want to remove it as soon as humanly possible. You want to use pointy tweezers to do that, and you want to take care of the wound. You want to sterilize the area where it was. You do have a hole in your skin that something else was drooling into. You definitely want to sterilize it. In order to remove it, take your tweezers, get as close as to your skin surface as possible, grip the head area of the tick, not the rear end, the butt end. You don't want to squeeze anything out of the tick into you. You want to get as close to your skin as possible and pull straight up and out. You want to do this firmly, but you don't want to rip it out. You don't want to wiggle it out. You don't want to twirl it around. That breaks pieces of the tick off and can cause some infections later on. The other things that people talk about with ticks are always things like fire or alcohol or essential oils on the tick while it's plugged into you. These are things that will kill the tick or will agitate it away from you, but they also cause it sometimes to vomit into you, and that can increase the likelihood of disease transmission. So you don't want to do that. Don't use a match. Don't pour bourbon on it. Don't get your essential oils out and smother it. You want to pull it out first, and then you can do whatever you want to it. I would encourage you to at least take a picture of it to show a doctor if you want, but you can then destroy it with fire. You can shoot it to the sun. You can curse it to Hades, whatever you want to do in order to get rid of that tick. But definitely pull it out and don't do that while it's attached to you. That's all I've got for you today. I hope you've learned a little bit about ticks. I'm happy to take any questions or hear what some folks have to say about ticks. I know that they're not everybody's most favorite organism on planet Earth.
I know just some of those pictures. I was like, ticks are something that does get me, and we have short courses and things like that, and I've had ticks on me, so it's just a thing with forestry, like you said. Folks, I want to remind you that if you have any questions, please type them in the chat pod, and we will be able to get those answered. One question that we already have is there a good treatment for property? She said that, or he said that he learned that lime works.
I can't say that I've heard about the lime part. I do know that you can spray some things to help cut down on chiggers and ticks in particular. Usually we would be talking about a pyrethroid insecticide for that. Pyrethroids are pretty broad spectrum in terms of their control. They don't last for a super long period of time, but if you get them onto the tick or onto the surfaces that the tick frequents, the grass blades, then that's going to kill them. They're also pretty cheap at this point. They're off patent. And so you have a lot of different types available. Bifenthrin, cyfluthrin, those kinds of things would be helpful in terms of tick control. Also mowing. If you can keep things kind of tidier in an area, then if it's frequented by people, if it's a hot spot that people are going to be in, if you can just keep the grass mowed or keep a clear path and let people know they should stick to the center of the path as much as possible, that helps to prevent ticks from being able to get onto folks.
Someone also wants to know, when should you see a doctor after a tick bite?
If you are worried at all, I would encourage you to see your doctor. If you want some symptoms to be on the lookout for, the main things are to watch that bite site. You'll see a little hole in your skin. If you start to see a rash appear around it at all, or circle around it at all, that could be an infection. It could be an early sign of Lyme. It could be an early sign of Starry, which looks a lot like that. These are called arrhythmia rashes. They often look like a bullseye. And so you definitely want to go to a doctor for that. Tell them what happened. It's good to try and keep some sort of evidence of the tick, like I mentioned, either the specimen itself preserved in alcohol or at least a photograph. You can talk to us in the entomology department and we can identify it for you, so you can have an educated conversation with your physician about what was on you, and you should tell them what you want. They are your provider, and if you feel that you need to be tested for Lyme or another tick-borne pathogen, you should be able to encourage them to do that. I know there's been some pushback before on Lyme testing in Kentucky based on some older data that believed it wasn't as prevalent in the state as it seems to be now. It seems to be kind of infiltrating. So definitely, if there's any rashes, if you have a fever, if you feel sluggish at all or confused, those are all signs of some of the various tick pathogen diseases that we have. Or if you eat a hamburger and you start to sweat a lot or have a lot of mucus produced, that's a sign of the red meat allergy.
Oh, okay. I can't imagine having that.
That's the one. I get the most questions about that, honestly. I thought it would be Lyme disease, but more and more people talk to me about the red meat allergy. I think folks are concerned about what would happen to their diet. You'd have to buy potentially more expensive protein sources, plant-based or poultry-based or what have you. Some people just don't like those kinds of things. They don't want to lose that part of their diet. And a lot of people eat deer meat if they're a hunter, and they could be exposed to this. So it kind of takes a lot of the power out of being a hunter. You can't eat what you kill. It's kind of tragic. So yeah, we get a lot of questions about that one.
Jonathan, I was going to ask, ticks get a lot of bad rap, it sounds like. Are there some redeeming qualities of ticks? I mean, do they serve some good for us out there in the world?
Let me dig deep down and see what I can pull up for you on that. I know possums like them. Possums love to eat them. So they are a food source for some things. But other than that, it would be difficult for me to point to something about a tick and say, like, this is a net benefit for humanity. Yeah, it would be very difficult for me to do that, other than to say certain things in the wild consume them.
Right. I was going to say, speaking of wildlife, we had Dr. Matt Springer on a while back, and he was talking about damage to your garden from wildlife or plots like that. And he was saying the same thing, keeping it nice and tidy, not a lot of overgrown area. So kind of that same kind of recommendation will serve not only for maybe chipmunks and other things, but also for ticks.
Absolutely. And they love those chipmunks, and they love rodents that are that size. So helping to manage those in your property also cuts down on the amount of ticks that can survive there. There's lots of people that are working on research that sort of associates higher deer, mouse populations with tick populations, because we have seen some explosions in both. So there's some trying to match up those kinds of populations and track them.
Someone was also wondering, is there a bug similar to a tick?
Yeah, so ticks, they have a lot of relatives. As members of Arachnida, they would be closely related. So there's spiders, scorpions, and then the ticks and mites. The ticks and mites all sort of vaguely look similar. So there can be some bigger mites, like a velvet mite that's kind of bright red and has those 8 legs and it kind of scurries around like a tick. That would be one that I could see folks getting confused for a tick for sure.
And also, someone said something about spreading diseases for growth and decay. Are Lyme infected ticks in Kentucky prevalent in Kentucky?
I won't go as far as to say prevalent, but we are seeing with Anna Pasternak, her research that she's focused on finding out what ticks live in each county. She goes around and does a tick survey. It's really cool. I had a video of it. I didn't include it today, but basically she gets this burlap piece. It's like 4 feet long, and she ties a rope to one end of it, and you just drag it through the underbrush, and ticks get confused and think it's something they can eat, and they climb on. And she collects dozens and dozens of ticks this way. And she has found that the black-legged tick is in more counties than we previously had reckoned. And not only that, she's testing them for pathogens, and she's finding that Lyme is slightly more common than we had previously believed. So Lyme is usually associated with New England. It does seem to be kind of infiltrating the state. It used to be sort of a border problem. It was along the edge of the state, but now we are seeing more and more cases pop up in the center of the state in more interior counties. So it's something that we're keeping an eye on. We definitely want to keep abreast of that. She's going to produce some maps that show where these ticks live, so people who are going hiking or going to visit any given county can see what lives there and what the pathogen rates have been in the past, and maybe that can help them prepare as they're going out for their excursion.
So someone asked, is there a cure for Lyme and other diseases?
So yeah, actually a lot of the diseases that I mentioned here today, these are bacterial diseases. So an antibiotic course actually will cure them if it's caught in time. If you miss that early window, especially with Lyme, then you can end up with a situation that I think they're tending to call chronic Lyme now, where you start to have these recurring symptoms, sort of like somebody who had malaria and then didn't get treatment in time. They tend to have these recurrent issues throughout their life. So with Lyme, that can be neurological. Some people suffer from confusion and things like that, or headaches, all the way up to paralysis even. I think that Anna has met some folks that they didn't have the use of their lower limbs based on some chronic Lyme. So if you get to the doctor when you start to see those symptoms and you're tested, or if you just tell them you want a big course of antibiotics, that will cure the Lyme disease. It's a bacteria, it'll wipe it out. But if you miss that window, then no, you're not going to be able to get rid of the chronic Lyme symptoms. For a lot of the other ones, it's the same story. You want to get to it early, and then you'll get rid of it. Very few of them are fatal. Rocky Mountain spotted fever has some mortality associated with it. It's not super high anymore, but you should definitely see a doctor if you have red spots appearing on your outer limbs. The red meat allergy, unfortunately, we don't have a cure for other than time. All that I've seen so far is allergists saying you got to wait it out, and it can be a few months up to a few years before it sort of works its way out of you. That's always bad news. Sorry to share.
Definitely. So they also want to know what spreads ticks. Is it birds?
Wildlife and birds, yeah, can spread ticks around. People can spread ticks around when we move objects around, and they just spread themselves. It's slow. It's molasses slow with them on their own. But when they hitchhike or get on other things, yeah, a deer or an elk that's wandering around is going to drop ticks off in new areas. And if it's a female that's been mated with or she can find, a male partner, she's going to be able to produce eggs and start a new tick population there. That's one of the things that we worry about. I didn't talk about it today. It's this invasive tick, is the Asian longhorn tick. And we've had 2 confirmed reports of it in Kentucky, and both were on elk over in eastern Kentucky that had migrated in. You know, they don't know that there's a state line where they're supposed to be in West Virginia and not here. So they wandered over and they had this tick on them. And we're worried that it could pop off of one of these wildlife specimens and then get started in the state. So yeah, that's definitely one of the main ways they get moved.
So not only invasive plants, we also have invasive ticks now.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a weird one, because when I usually talk about invasive species, you know, I'm talking about Japanese beetle or Asian longhorn beetle, or I'm talking about hemlock woolly adelgid, these things that attack plants. That seems to be our main invasive species in entomology. But with this tick, we don't know exactly how it got here, but it got loose in New Jersey. That was where it was first confirmed. It's now in several other states, including West Virginia. There's a specimen from Missouri as well. And it's really weird because it reproduces asexually. It's just kind of like an aphid. And so they can clone themselves. We've not found any males in the United States. It's just these female ticks that make photocopies of themselves. You get this boom in a population of the Asian longhorn tick. So far, the disease transmission side has been pretty quiet. They don't have any of their Asian pathogens in them when they've been found here, which is good. There was a paper that just came out, I think 2 days ago, that said they could be a competent vector for Rocky Mountain spotted fever, but they can't transmit Lyme. That was good news from a couple of years ago. But on an animal, with that population explosion that they can have, we've actually seen, I think it was calves in Tennessee, calves or lambs, they were exsanguinated by these ticks. They bled to death into them. So it's a potent problem for the future that we're keeping an eye on.
Wow. We also had another question, and I know you touched on this a little bit, but they wanted to know what was the best spray for when they're walking, hiking, or fishing.
So on your body, I would say, I would say those insect repellents you see at the store, like DEET and things like that, will help to keep the ticks and mosquitoes both off of you. If you want to go a little more in depth, I would say permethrin on your pants, permethrin on your shirt. That will help if the tick starts to crawl up you, it's going to kill it. In terms of in the surrounding area, if you have property you're maintaining, that would be those more pyrethroid-based sprays. So that would be more of an insecticide application there.
Yeah, Jonathan, many of our clientele, they're out in the woods a lot, so they don't have the opportunity to really modify the habitat like you do in your yard. So you have to be prepared to meet the ticks on their own playing surface.
That's right. You're in their house. You have to be prepared to try and fend them off of your body.
It looks like we have one more question for you. Why are there so many ticks than there used to be?
That's a very interesting question. There's a lot of people that are wondering that. As I mentioned before, there's some folks that are concerned that it's associated with escalation in populations of deer mice as well as white-tailed deer, that's helped ticks to be more successful. There's also climate change that we have to consider when we're talking about this, that ticks are going to be more successful during milder winters if we have those. Ticks can also survive some of our more extreme weather events that we've seen, such as the polar vortex. That didn't seem to wipe them out. It just seems like they're going to be able to weather through any of those problems and take advantage of the different climate that's on the other side. We also have seen sometimes, like, we have wetter springs, it seems like nowadays, and with that kind of bloom of vegetation where it gets out of control really quickly, that's a lot of habitat for ticks to take advantage of. So anything like that is definitely going to help them. I've always wondered about that myself. I don't know that I have a definite answer why it seems like there's so many more ticks, but those are some of the leading theories.
So it looks like we're going to be left with cockroaches and ticks at the end, right?
Yeah, the ticks can feed on the roaches for sure.
Oh, Jonathan, thank you so much. And what a great segment. You know, it's a very important segment, certainly when we're talking about people's health and the impact this can have on their health. So can't thank you enough for an amazing segment, really.
I appreciate the opportunity. I'll stick around. Maybe we'll have some more questions later on.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Wow, Renee, ticks, man.
Ticks too.
Yeah, that was a really good segment. So I hope everybody got some good information out of that. I will remind you that we are recording these segments. So if you missed any of Jonathan's or you want to go back and see some of those products he was talking about, you can check the recordings out. So Renee, we've got one more segment for today's show. We're going to kind of shift gears away from ticks a little bit and talk about the tree of the week. This week, we're going to be featuring the black cherry. Black cherry is a beautiful tree, also pretty valuable wood. And we have Laurie Thomas, who put together a nice segment for us. And if okay by you, I'll go ahead and share that with the group.
That'll be great.
Hi, I'm Laurie Thomas with the UK Department of Forestry and Natural Resources, and I'm here with the tree of the week, the black cherry, Prunus serratina. It's also known as wild black cherry, rum cherry, and mountain black cherry. Black cherry, the largest of the native cherries and the main one of commercial value, is also an important tree for wildlife. It typically grows 60 to 80 feet tall and up to 2 to 3 feet in diameter. It grows best in rich, deep, moist soils, but is classified as shade intolerant, so commonly found in successional vegetation or forest openings, old fields, and along fence rows. It can live to be 150 to 200 years old. It is found throughout the eastern United States with several geographic variants, as you can see in the range map. There are numerous varieties in Texas, Mexico, and Guatemala. Black cherry flowers are small and white and are grouped in hanging narrow clusters called racemes. The clusters are typically 4 to 6 inches long. The flowers are perfect and are insect pollinated by several species of flies and several species of bees, including the honeybee. The leaves are deciduous, alternately ranged on the stem, and they are simple, which means they are composed of just one blade. The leaf is 2 to 5 inches long, and it's oblong to lance-shaped with finely serrated margins. They are dark green and lustrous above and paler below during the growing season. The autumn color varies from a striking red to a golden yellow. The fruit is a dark purple round drupe, almost black when ripened, which is where the tree gets its common name from, black cherry. The drupes are about 1/3 inch in diameter with a bittersweet taste. They typically ripen in late summer into September. Best seed production is between 30 and 100 years of age. Some seed is produced most years with good seed crops at 1 to 5 year intervals. The bulk of the seed crop fall to the ground within the vicinity of the parent tree. However, some seed is scattered by songbirds and mammals such as fox and bear. Black cherry fruits are an important source of soft mast for many non-game songbirds such as the brown thrasher, the cedar waxwing, and the eastern bluebird, some of my favorite birds. Black cherries are also an important food source for several game birds, including the ruffed grouse, wild turkey, and northern bobwhite. Fox, raccoons, squirrels, and rabbits also eat the fruit, and the cherries have been described as a favorite of black bears. The bark is smooth with numerous short, narrow, horizontal lenticels when the tree is young. It becomes very dark, nearly black, breaking into small, rough, irregular upturned plates when it gets older. Some have described it as looking like burnt cornflakes. The most important defoliating insects that attack black cherry include eastern tent caterpillar, which is a pest that is native to North America. Their populations vary from year to year, with outbreaks occurring every several years. The caterpillars hatch from shiny egg masses that contain between 150 to 400 eggs that have been deposited on the black cherry tree, as well as apples and crabapples the prior fall. Once they hatch in early spring, the caterpillars from one or more egg mass will build silken nests in the host tree. They emerge from the nest in early morning or late evening and even overnight to feed on the leaves in late spring and early summer. Large groups can defoliate entire trees, but the trees typically recover and put out a new growth of leaves. Black knot is a common but serious native disease of cherries and wild plums. The disease is caused by the fungus Apiosporina morbosa. It causes elongated, rough black swelling several times the diameter of the normal stem. Small twigs may be killed within a year after the infection. Large cankerous swellings, a foot or more in length, may occur on the trunks of larger trees, and where several such lesions are scattered along the bulb, the tree is worthless for lumber. Pruning the affected areas with proper sanitation of the removed area is the primary means for dealing with black knot. The wood, especially from large, high-quality trees, is highly valued and used for furniture and veneer. These trees are typically found in a small range in the Allegheny Plateau of Pennsylvania, New York, and West Virginia. The heartwood is pinkish brown when first cut and darkens to medium red-brown when exposed to light. The sapwood tends to be a pale yellowish color. The grain is usually straight and easy to work. It is known as being one of the best all-around woods for workability. The wood is commonly used for cabinetry, furniture, flooring, turned objects, and small specialty wood items. The national champion black cherry is in Licking, Ohio. It's 196 inches in circumference, which is over 16 feet. It's 111 feet tall with a 79-foot crown spread. Kentucky's champion black cherry is in Hardin County. It's 202 inches in circumference, 89 feet tall, with a 70-foot crown spread. If you'd like to know more about champion trees, check out American Forest Champion Tree National Register or the Kentucky Division of Forestry Champion Trees. Now for a few fun facts about black cherry. The twigs, leaves, and bark of the black cherry contain cyanide in a bound form as a cyanogenic glycoside. When the foliage wilts, the cyanide is released and can be potentially lethal to livestock. Deer and rabbit also eat the foliage, but not when it's wilted, so they are not harmed. Black cherry grows the largest of all cherries in North America. Pioneers in the Appalachian Mountain used the fruit to flavor rums or brandy to make a drink called cherry bounce. The fruit was also used to make jams and jellies. The scientific name Prunus ceratina is from the Greek prunos, which means plum or cherry, while ceratina is from the Latin cerus, which means late and refers to the late ripening fruit. I hope you've enjoyed the black cherry today and get the opportunity to get out into your neighborhood, a local park, or your woodland and enjoy the beauty of the black cherry.
Well, that was really interesting. I really enjoyed that. And I think today we have Lori Thomas actually on with us, so that would be great. And she can tell us a little bit about some of these identifying trees and that kind of thing. But Lori, I'm glad you did this video because I actually have cherry cabinets and I see some of that sapwood and I never knew what that was. So now I know, so I appreciate that.
Well, great. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. We've done several of these. I've thoroughly enjoyed doing it. It's kind of like for me going back in time when I was in school and took dendrology and was learning all of these things about the trees in Kentucky, which, by the way, we have over 120 different species of trees in Kentucky. So we got a lot of segments we can do on this, don't we? But I was going to say we've got a lot of different trees, and you all have the opportunity to get out and see a lot of those and learn more about them from programs like this. But I was going to share some, and I think Billy's got I've got a short little couple of slides to show you some resources that might be helpful to find out some more information about the trees you're seeing or that are in your yard or your woodland. And these are some book resources that I like real well. The one in the center is the Tree Finder, and it's a dichotomous key. So it's going to help you identify your tree. It's going to get you from the very beginning to hopefully figuring out what it is. And it's going to walk you through step by step, asking you questions about the characteristics of your tree, which you'll notice when we go through the little videos that we do on them. I usually talk about, what the leaves look like, what the fruit looks like, what the bark looks like. So it'll ask you some of those questions and it helps get you to that answer. And then there's another one, it's The Natural History of Trees. And this is a wonderful book. If you want to learn more about some of the past uses of trees and how people, Native Americans or early explorers, how they used the trees, what it meant to them, some special symbolisms. So it's a really interesting read. I mean, it's just a great read anyway, even beyond a resource. And then the other book is The Trees of Kentucky, Trees and Shrubs of Kentucky by Wharton and Barber. Great resource. They have put together, it was put together many years ago, but it shows you everything about the trees. It shows you the trees in the winter, so what the form looks like without leaves. It shows you what the bark looks like. And they have pictures of the flowers, the leaves in the fall. So, it's a very good resource. I know when I worked at a park as a naturalist, this was a great resource. Somebody come in and ask, and we could show them everything about that tree or that shrub. So those are some good resources. And if you go to the next slide, These are some online resources, and the one I'll talk about first is the Native Trees of Kentucky that we have. It's based out of the UK Department of Horticulture, and they've got, I think, about 80 different trees, and they're great little fact sheets. You could click on, they're like hyperlinks. You can click on each one of those and find out about the native trees, about 80, like I said, 80 different trees, native trees of Kentucky. Really good resource. They don't have a whole lot of photographs in there, but a lot of good information. And good information if you're thinking about using it as a landscape tree. So that's a real nice resource for a homeowner, somebody thinking about putting some of these trees out in their landscape. Now, the other one that I like real well is Virginia Tech Dendrology. Not only are there fact sheets about these trees, but it also has a built-in tree key. So instead of, if you have a tree in your yard and you can take a sample and bring it in, you can sit down at your computer and use the Virginia Tech Dendrology Tree ID key to figure out what you have. They also have one for an app too. You can download one on your phone as well. But again, the fact sheets, lots of great information, lots of good pictures and stuff in there too. So those are two good online resources. And if you click over to the next one, please. And then the last one I wanted to mention, well, wait, one more I'll mention that I didn't put in here is iNaturalist. And I think we talked about this last week when we were talking about mushrooms and some other stuff, but iNaturalist is a free app you can download on your phone. And you simply, what are you looking at? What tree is this? Snap a picture of the leaf and hit submit, and it's going to give you a list of maybe 8 or 10 possibilities, and you can look through those and go, yes, this is my tree. So it can be a pretty useful free app. So yeah, I forgot to put that one in there, but I wanted to mention that one. But then I also wanted to mention back on the UK Department of Forestry and Natural Resources website, we have a lot of resources on trees. We've got the Kentucky Woodlands Magazine. You can go back through, look at all our past issues on that. But we do have, one I wanted to point out were previous webinars, because on there we have a Tree ID webinar. And it's from a couple of years ago, but it's great. It shows you how to use that little tree finder dichotomous key book and walks you through exactly step by step how to do that, and talks about some of the characteristics of trees, what you want to look at. Not to mention, it's just loaded full of other great past webinars. We've got Dr. Ellen Crocker's with mushrooms, and we've got deer management with Dr. Matt Springer. So you can sit down, in the evening, and they're only about 40, 45 minutes, but a great resource there with the previous webinars. So check them out and learn more about Kentucky's trees.
Thank you, Lori. We greatly appreciate you being on, and it sounds like we might have another show idea. you doing a tree ID.
No doubt.
Love to. Thank you.
I was going to say, Laurie, we really appreciate your efforts on this Tree of the Week. It's a nice segment we have. And, Renee, when we are in undergraduate school for our forestry degrees, we have to take a course called dendrology. And it's basically the study of trees. And it's an entire semester with about 1 million field trips. So there's a lot to learning the trees. But please, we encourage people to get to know their trees and how they can help us in so many ways. So, Laurie, thank you so much for highlighting Kentucky's beautiful trees. We really appreciate it.
All right. Well, and next week we will be focusing on white oak, the ever important white oak. So
we appreciate you doing this every week. We really do.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. Laurie mentions white oak, Renee, and it's really going to be all white oak next week, basically.
All white oak all the time.
Yeah. So if you don't know, white oak is a pretty important species, tree species here in Kentucky and really throughout the central United States. It provides a lot of food and habitat for wildlife. It's also the key ingredient to making bourbon. So it's really important to the distillers in that group. And there's actually a white oak initiative that's been started, and we're going to have some folks on talking about that next week. Some of the work that this initiative is doing includes some of the work of some of the distillers. If you may have heard, they've been doing some sanitizers instead of running their bourbon. They're making some products to help during this pandemic. So we're going to be highlighting the White Oak Initiative and some of the work of those members. And we're also going to have the Tree of the Week, as Laurie said, it's going to be on white oak as well. So all white oak next week. So make sure you join us for that.
And she can tell us all about why white oak is so important. So,
Yeah.
that'll be great.
Yeah. All right. And then I'll say another plug coming up on June 10th. We're starting a new series within this from thewoods.today.com, and it is going to be Forestry 101. We have our newest faculty member, Dr. Jacob Muller, is going to be he's starting a series starting on June 10th, Forestry 101. It's going to kind of walk you through some of the basics of forestry and forest management and how you can work with foresters and all of that. So we're looking forward to that. So we've got a number of shows lined up for you all, and we can't thank you all enough for being with us each and every week. Renee, I will remind them to fill out the survey on our website from thewoods.today.com and let us know if you have show ideas or, if there's something you'd like to see, or if you have seen something in your woods you'd like for us to identify. Please use that as an outlet to connect with us.
Yeah, we've used that before. We've had someone actually send in a snake photo, and Dr. Matt Springer did a whole section on that. So it may be something that you have in, like Billy said, have in your woods, and you want to talk, you want to know about it, and we may end up doing a show on it. So you just never know. But we'll definitely let you know if we decide to do that. But we really appreciate you joining us every week. And again, if you have ideas, all the past shows are on fromthewoodstoday.com. So you can see all of those. If you happen to miss something or you're like, oh, what did they say? I know I do that. I'll try to remember something, can't. So you can always go back to our website and find out some more information.
Yes, and a big thanks also not only to our viewers that are here with us live via Zoom, a big thanks to all of you all watching on Facebook Live. We certainly appreciate you all being with us as well. So we'll look forward to seeing everybody next week. Yes, yeah, Renee always says, like us on Facebook.
Watch it on Facebook. Yep. If you're watching on Facebook, remember to like us. That way you can always get information about us. And when our shows come on, it'll pop up on your screen and you'll know it.
No doubt. And I would also say, please help us spread the word. We feel like there's a lot of people that would appreciate and enjoy some of the content we're trying to cover in this show. So if you know of others, please pass it along. We would really appreciate it. And Renee, thank you again for all the work you do on this show. It's really an enjoyable experience each week to interact with folks.
It definitely is. So I think, folks, that's all we have for today. I will remind you that we have an agent seminar after the fact, after this show. So if you're an agent or part of an extension office and want to stick around for that, we would love to have you. And if not, then I think our show is over for today, and we will see you next week at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you next week, June 3rd, and we'll be talking about the White Oak Initiative and white oak trees. So come join us then. Thanks.